My name is Hannah McLeod and I work for the City Mental Health Alliance Hong Kong. This clip is part of a series of gathering viewpoints from experts focused on supporting employees to stay mentally healthy amid COVID-19. Today we welcome Danielle Buckley, who is a registered and coaching psychologist and Linklaters on-site psychologist in Hong Kong. Danielle is going to explore how to maintain healthy minds during complex times.
Thank you, Hannah. It's such a pleasure to be here today. As you said, my name's Danielle Buckley. I'm a registered and coaching psychologist, and I'm also Linklaters on-site psychologist in Hong Kong. Today, I want to talk about how we can approach this really complex time, and I have a whole series of complex challenges facing us. For people in Hong Kong, they've had a period of uncertainty now for close to 2, coming up to 3 months. And so what's happened during that time is we've seen this real shift to remote working, and we know that different people are experiencing really different things. So we've seen a rise in homeschooling, and for people in Hong Kong, that's been going on since January, and now their family and friends and counterparts throughout the world are also starting to experience some of these challenges too. We know that typically a lot of people were already feeling isolated in professional services, but what we've seen with an emergence of work from home policies and people working just from home and away from their communities and networks is an increase in isolation. And this has impacted whether people feel they're being as productive as they should. Some people are being even busier than they normally would, but for others there's been a negative shift in productivity. We've also seen some real family challenges, and this has resulted in some real negative emotions around fear, anxiety, worry, and obviously as well, we're seeing many people face real financial challenges during this period. With all of these complex challenges, it's really normal for people to feel a surge of negative emotions, and an important message is that anxiety and fear, particularly in these complex times, are normal natural responses to challenging situations that are driven by a perceived sense of danger and uncertainty. So anxiety in and of itself is not bad, but we need to think about it more as a warning sign to take action. So when we're met with a complex challenge, whether that be our change in work, our change in productivity, having huge amounts of things to do in the home with balancing work from home, homeschooling and social isolation, it's normal that we feel this sense of worry, anxiety and fear. And what we notice when we're feeling this is this huge surge in cortisol. So we experience an increased heart rate, we experience at times our breathing quickens, and we zoom in on our attention to the problem as we start to prepare to act. And we know that this signal, so anxiety is like a message, it's like a phone ringing, and we know that this is really useful in life and death situations. It tells us whether we should act, whether we should pounce, whether we should run away and flee. But it's actually not that useful in less threatening situations, like when we see another email asking us to do something, or when we think the amount of things we need to get through over the course of the day is more than we can actually handle. So what I want to talk quickly about today is that we know between stimulus and response there is choice. So when we're faced with these periods of uncertainty, of anxiety, of worry or fear, we see and we feel these emotions, but between these emotions there's a moment where we can pause and make a choice in how we act. And this is particularly important for people in businesses today who are dealing with some of these really complex challenges. We know that when it comes to our reactions to fear and anxiety and these complex challenges, we can either have a series of helpful responses or unhelpful responses. So if you're thinking about how you can respond to how you're experiencing this time, first of all, we know that humans have 3 core psychological needs. So we have the need for competence. We need to feel good at what we do. We need to feel a sense of autonomy, so feeling in control of our life, and we need a sense of relatedness. So this means we need good, positive relationships with each other. This is really important to think about as people are now moving to work from home, and people are now in this really uncertain circumstance of, am I performing? What does work look like for me now? And how do I keep building relationships with people even though I'm not physically near them? We also know that culture, and a good culture, is driven by trust. So I'm going to encourage businesses and leaders now to not just think about the process of how we deal with these complex times, and even though process is important, and we're seeing COVID-19 task force pop up everywhere, but I would encourage those leaders and HR managers and people in business to think about people as well, and not just the process. So while process matters, how are people responding and how are people staying connected? And to do that, now more than ever is a time where we need to invest in building robust relationships between managers, because we know the tighter and more positive the relationship between the manager and the team is, the more this positively influences teams' performance. So really quickly, now is an opportunity for businesses to consider whether they're going to help people flourish or flounder. And we've seen some really positive outcomes of how businesses are starting to deal with these complex times. And the first is we want people to validate emotions. So we need to acknowledge that this is an unprecedented time. This is a time where it is normal to feel anxiety and stress, because this is a challenging and complex situation. So if we're going to stop ourselves from feeling these emotions, squash or deny them, that's really doing us more harm than it is good. So we also know that we need to continue connections. It is physical distancing, not social distancing. So even though we cannot be in an office, even though we cannot be close to other people, we are privileged to have all of these great tools around us, like Zoom, like WebEx, like FaceTime, where we can still connect, seeing people and communicating with people, and we can still check in. Now's the time to upskill employees. So get talking about mental health and wellbeing. We need to have this on the agenda, because even if people have these underlying situations of stress, depression, of anxiety, it's these times that can influence people to either flourish or flounder. These are the times that can either help people or hinder them in how they deal and how they work with others. We know that positive emotional contagion builds supportive workplace cultures. So how are you showing up to your team? And I encourage people when they're getting on team calls to have those immediate chats about how you're going and checking in and building a positive framework in the way that you communicate. Yes, this is a scary and uncertain time, but every conversation does not need to be dominated by the situation around us. So that brings me on to the next point, which is choose the experts and the information source. We are so lucky in many businesses today to have designated teams that are the leaders and information source on how the business will use and operate in this unprecedented time. That frees up other people to just really get on with the job and get on with building networks and communication and create new ways of working. So this is an opportunity to be creative, to be innovative, and to start thinking about what you can do differently.